details.
I feel more informed when I listen.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
All right, you are tuning into the Hrvoje Moric show on TNTRadio.live. I'm an American Mexican chatting with a Mexican American, Carlos Abelar, who is an entrepreneur from the west side of San Antonio, Texas, and he's the host of the very cool Los Libertinos podcast, which you can find on YouTube and find him on Twitter at El Libertinos. ¿Cómo estás, Carlos?
No, aquí todo bien. How are you doing, man? What's up, man? What's the word?
I'm doing all right. How was your breakfast taco?
Oh, man, híjole. So I don't do breakfast tacos as much as I used to. I'm on this one meal a day kind of diet because it's funny, man. Tacos and me have a interesting relationship. I eat them and my stomach just gets bigger, man. So I can't really do too many of them. But when I do, I go pretty hard on them. But this weekend for sure, we definitely hit barbacoa and Big Red tacos. We actually have a fest here in San Antonio called Barbacoa and Big Red, where for anybody that doesn't know who barbacoa is, it's basically the cow head. And in Mexico, I know when I've gone there before, they actually have the cow head out there exposed, and they're just getting the meat from the cheek out and cutting it up on a wood board, and they just serve them to you. But over here, they don't do it like that. They just do it a different way, but it's still the same idea. But yeah, man, this weekend for sure, barbacoa tacos.
Mexico has solutions for everything. So if you got that issue, we can go down to like the Chiapas, Oaxaca region, and you can eat some crickets, and then that way you can prepare for the Great Reset. You'll be all good to go with that insect protein and bug burgers. But when I first came to Mexico, there was my favorite taco guy, and they had all sorts of meats. Right, there's brain, as you said. I know a lot of people who like the tongue, and I asked the guy once, to try the tongue taco, and he's because I said that's going to help my Spanish, right? And he's like no, because that was beef from the U.S. So that's an English-speaking cow, not a Spanish-speaking cow. So, anyways, your Los Libertinos podcast is great. I discovered it just recently, and it's very wide-ranging in themes and topics that you explore. It's fun. How did it get started, and how did you fall down the podcast rabbit hole?
So that story started in 2010. So basically, around 20, and during like a lot of people, right? We always got to start off with Ron Paul, right? So during the Ron Paul campaign of 2008, I used to call into talk radio as my strategic way of trying to spread the message. And what I noticed was that I would look up the stats of what the talk radio shows were reaching locally, and I was like, oh shit, well, this is way more efficient than standing out like a tonto out there on the highway. So I just started calling a lot, and then around 2010, one of the hosts had said, he called me, and the producer called me and said, hey, do you want to try to come on to this panel that we have weekly and hang out with some of the local media people, like news editors, and some of the politicians, whether they're like DAs or some of the local reps. And to me, I was kind of like, well, shit, yeah, I'm talking shit about the whole system, and well, why not hang around and see what's up, So I was doing that for many, many years, where I kind of felt that I didn't have to do a lot of the street campaigning for like the 2012 campaign and stuff like that, because I thought, hey, I'm doing my shit like on the radio. But then when COVID hit, they stopped doing this panel, and I still felt the urge, because I would get called in like once a month, and I still had the urge to kind of talk my shit. So that's kind of where it started, the idea of like, you know what, maybe I'll do a podcast, and instead of coming on to a panel, I might be the vato that's interviewing some people, and that's kind of the way it started. So I started it last year around May, and I'm a little bit over 40 episodes. I try to do episode a week, and basically, I talk to a lot of cool people, and the idea behind it is that I'm someone that is not what you would consider well read. A lot of the podcasts that I like to like jam, the one of the common themes, and maybe it's in your mix there too. But it's, I don't got nothing against it. Is like the people have like their books in the background. Okay, I have no books because I don't read any books because that's just not my thing. I've never been a really good reader to sit down and read books, but I like to listen, and I'm a visual person, so I've always liked to watch YouTube videos of people doing interviews and all that. And I always thought, when I'm listening to those interviews and jamming them, I always think, well, of questions that I would ask if I was interviewing them. So then that's kind of what it came up to. So I just started. Then the idea came where I got some friends to kind of help me out on the production side, on making an audio, doing all that stuff that it kind of takes you some steps to get into it. And then we just rode with it. My first interview was with AJ Van Slyke, who is a former baseball player. And he was in the camps with Peter Schiff and with Tom Woods, producer. And, that was my first interview. And my most recent interview was with a guy named Brian, who was my wife. And we got a vato to be our doula for our first kid, which is kind of different, especially in Latino community, to get a doula, and especially a vato. But so yeah, man, I'm a freestyle kind of guy, and so that's kind of the vibe of the show. Is it's really to let people that are kind of my style, like my homies and friends and family, to go ahead and tune in and not feel intimidated by the host that might have a PhD in this or has written books on that. I'm just talking to them like I would talk to them if they were hanging out here on a weekend watching the boxing fights,
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Ron Paul. And so I've interviewed a lot of libertarian folks, and so many people say that Ron Paul was the one that lit the fire, on their behinds. And I would say for me as well, first for me, it was like first going down the 9/11 rabbit hole, but then later, I think he was the only person I voted for as president because I couldn't stomach anyone else. And so for me too, Ron Paul slapped me upside the head. I wouldn't call myself a libertarian, but there are a lot of libertarian principles that I adhere to. I think that are just universal. Like I don't know who wouldn't want freedom. What's your general worldview? Would you just label yourself libertarian?
I guess if somebody asked me, I would just say that I'm like pro liberty. If somebody really was into political terms, I really just like to say I'm sometimes I'll say like that that I'm so far right that I'll end up in the left. And my spectrum is big because I feel that since I try to not be judgmental on the way people live, because I like to give the benefit of the doubt that most people are kind of a reflection and a manifestation of how they're raised and where their culture and their upbringing and any trauma or good or bad. I like to put myself in people's shoes sometimes so I can understand a lot of point of views. And that's probably why I could interview basically anybody, that's where that comes from. But yeah, if somebody really like asked me, I'll probably just say, I'm libertarian, just to kind of a short answer. But I can jam all kinds of music, political music.
Yeah, that's my philosophy too. I mean, if you go to on my podcast, like I've talked to everyone, and then I've gotten reviews calling me all sorts of names, commie, right winger, so on and so forth. But that's what happens when you try to talk to everyone in a respectful way. On your podcast, you cover a lot of sports, but also war, politics, culture, the supernatural, economy, empire. And I've got a number of issues I can bring up, but I'm just curious regarding America or the world. I mean, are there things that are really bugging you, freaking you out, or just really of interest that you're looking at right now?
So the one thing that is my agenda on the show is that I've never heard anybody say this, so this is my shit, this is my jam. Even when I was on the radio, locally here on Talk Radio, I would say that I basically want in my lifetime for Texas to win a World Cup before the U.S. or Mexico does. So that's basically my agenda, and I'm focusing strongly on that because it's one of my passions. You know, I say football is life. I kind of also say that if once Americans actually start caring about who the FIFA president is rather than the U.S. president, we'd stop being the empire and start really being a republic. And you know, I know it sounds kind of like, what is this guy saying? You know, hey, you know, take it easy with the tequila, vato. But you know, I really do believe that culturally, if we can become a society where we embrace football, we would be a better, we would have a better life for everybody. Now, I know that's a hard ask, especially here in the United States where we call it soccer. I know it's a hard ask, especially when the main sports, you know, football, soccer is not the top one. But that's really what's on my radar. I called my state rep and my Texas House rep today, their offices, to get their opinion on Texas joining FIFA as a member. And I didn't get a hold of them, but I got a hold of their, you know, whoever answers the phones, and we had a little conversation. And yeah, they had never really heard of the idea of what do you mean, like you can join the FIFA? I was like, well, yeah, you know, Scotland, Wales, they're part of the UK. England, you know, they're part of the UK, but you know, they have their own national team. So, you know, Texas is part of the United States. Why can't Texas have its own national team? So that's kind of my thing. You know, I focus on that and I put that into my show, and also the idea of boxing into my show too. That I really believe that I like to say that boxing is the sport of sovereigns asking the state permission to kill each other without consequence. And so I don't say that I'm anti-war. I really just say that I'm against state-sponsored war. But if two vatos weigh the same, all agree, whatever, they get in the ring, they want to go to war, you know what? I'll sit front row to that shit because that I respect.
So I had no idea what you just said about Texas being able to join. So you're teaching me things now. I don't follow sports too closely, only when it's like the World Cup and it's my three countries that are competing. But I actually first heard about you a couple of months ago, or not too long ago, when my friend James Guzman pointed out a tweet that you made regarding the announcement that the 2026 World Cup was coming to North America, where matches will be played in Canada, the U.S., and in Mexico and Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. And I guess you were half joking, half serious. I'm not sure that this was you know, a way to promote the North American Union, but I was having that same thought, but very seriously, because I've been studying that for over a decade, and I believe I conducted the last interview with Robert Pastor of the Council on Foreign Relations, who was known as the father of the North American Union, because in their white papers they actually reference using culture as well. You know, apart from the economic integration like we see in NAFTA, culture to bring about a North American Union. I mean, what are your thoughts on the World Cup coming to North America, as well as this idea of a North American Union?
Well, I think it's great because it's too expensive for me to go to South America or to Europe or to Africa or to Asia or this year's World Cup in Qatar. So if it's going to be in my backyard, we have in Texas. So the closest host cities for me is Monterrey, Dallas, and Houston. And so I think it's great. Now, it was about 2016. So I've been saying this since 2016. And I say it jokingly, but not really. So, you know, back in the day before Ron Paul and the 9/11 truth stuff, I wasn't very much a 9/11 truther, but I always did kind of say like, oh, what the fuck, Building 7? Like, you know, I could take two, but not that one. Anyway, I also got into Alex Jones and a lot of that North American Union and a lot of InfoWars stuff. And I just remember that I was against the North American Union and the idea of it because it was going to blend all of us together, and these jurisdictions sometimes have different cultures of law, and so I was against it. So I kind of found it funny when I started reading articles in 2015, basically where they were like, oh, the U.S. might have a joint bid for a World Cup with Mexico. And at the time it was just with Mexico, and then it ended up being a triple joint bid with Canada. And and I thought it was funny that this is something that I did like from Trump, was that and I follow this, is when he was I don't know if you guys remember this, when he was when Putin gave him the soccer ball, because at that time it was the 2014 World Cup in Russia, I believe that's what it was. Anyway, 2014. Anyway, he was passing the ball on because the United States had won the bid in 2018. But I remember on the eve of the vote from FIFA, Trump did one of his bullying tactics where he kind of said, "Hey, I hope FIFA, does the right thing and votes for our bid, because if not, there's going to be consequences." He kind of, basically said something like that, jokingly, but not really, Trump style. And I remember when we won it, I said, "Oh man, you know what? If Trump, that's the one thing that I remember that I really admire Trump for, is for using his leverage for getting us the World Cup." But I also find it funny that he probably, without knowing and without a lot of people knowing, is bringing a bigger step towards the North American Union than any president, because under his watch, he allowed for the United States, Mexico, and Canada to basically become a one venue for the World Cup for the world. So there's going to be, I don't know the number, millions of people coming to our country. Some will leave, some will stay, but they're coming here because of the World Cup. And I find it just fascinating that the North American Union didn't come from the power halls of DC or anything like that. It really came through football, and that's why I put a lot of weight on football culture to do my agenda, but also the agenda of peace, and that's through football. So it's a joke, but not really. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people coming into our country in 2026, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and I think I live near one of the stadiums where they'll likely be hosting a match or matches in Guadalajara, not too far from where I live. So I'll see if I can get tickets. We're going to have to take a short news update. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's up? If you're listening to this ad spot, it's probably because you're halfway through the show, which means that you like what I'm doing, which means that if you also want to support what I'm doing, you can check out palomaverdecbd.com. That is the official sponsor of the show. It is also a company that my wife and I run out of our home. It is a premium grade CBD company where you can get all of your CBD products that you need, from tinctures, salves, soft gels, pet products. And we have some new products, which are massage oils and bath bombs. So if you are looking for any type of CBD products and also want to support the show, visit palomaverdecbd.com. Use the promo code Chingazos, CHINGASOS, for 20% off anything off the store, off your order. So please visit palomaverdecbd.com. Appreciate the support. Peace.
All right, we are back. I wanted to bring up the topic of Mexican culture, Mexican American culture. It's something that's fascinated me since I was a kid. I was born in Chicago, and I grew up around Mexicans. I worked alongside Mexicans. I mean, there are literally parts of entire streets of Chicago that look like they have been transplanted from Mexico. Like, literally, I was amazed. I've gone down these streets and like everything's in Spanish, and it's like going down streets in Guadalajara. I can't believe it. It's just so fascinating. And my first girlfriend had been Mexican, and I ended with a Mexican wife in Mexico. So it's just fascinating. And so now I'm an American Mexican. You're a Mexican American.
So you like it spicy, right?
Yeah. And so maybe to get your thoughts on Mexican culture and Mexican American culture, because I think that there are distinctions. Mexican Americans speak Spanglish. I'm also Croatian American, so Croatian Americans speak Kringlish. They literally mix both languages. I think that's just common. But there are so many interesting things. Like tacos, generally in Mexico, are smaller. You get like usually the corner tacos; they're tiny. But I think when you eat tacos in America, Tex-Mex or whatever, they're much bigger because everything is bigger in America. So it's like Americanized. And I don't know where we'd start, but just your sort of thoughts on Mexican culture and Mexican American culture and some of the differences. Something I also noticed, that there are Mexican Americans that prefer the empire. They prefer English. They prefer America, and they kind of downplay their connections to Mexico and vice versa. So there's so many interesting things here.
Yeah. So my Mexican side comes from my parents, both, and I never really grew up with the idea that we had to pick a side. When there was World Cup games, if USA was playing against Mexico, even my parents that were from Mexico, they would say that they were going for the U.S. because of the opportunities that the U.S. did for them. But when Mexico would play against anybody else, well, obviously they go for Mexico, And so I never grew up with this any type of tension. It was always very freestyle in that it all blended together for me, especially because I'm from Texas, So there's already a natural blend because, first our state was called Texas. It was Texas y Coahuila was the original state that existed before it became whatever it is now. So for me, the Mexican, to me, it's just and I view it through boxing because my hero growing up, like everybody had a hero, that wasn't like your parents or something like that, was Julio Cesar Chavez. And, he was a short Mexican, small vato, and just somebody that liked to punch up because for the most part, we're chaparritos, And so to me, it's always like the underdog story. I always kind of think that Mexican people, depending on how they might identify, I know that there's like the Mexican people that identify more with their Spanish side. There's some that are more towards their Indio side. But under the flag of Mexico, like for instance, when they beat Germany in a World Cup game in the last one, there was this, I don't know if it's true. I think it is. I think I looked it up, where once the whistle blew for victory, that Mexico reported a small earthquake because all the people were jumping, so jumping at once for, celebrating. So that's kind of what, to me, Mexican culture is. It's kind of an underdog story of always punching up. But also, Mexicanos definitely like to talk some shit. Again, I always bring in football stuff. So they're one of these countries that has been punished and sanctioned from FIFA because I'm sure you know this, but like during the soccer matches, when the goalie is about to kick the goal kick, especially like at Azteca Stadium, where there's 100,000 people, they basically start cheering up and building up for when he kicks it. They basically yell out "puto," right, which is basically like a gay whore or something like that. There's all different ways of what puto means depending on how much you're drinking and how cool you are with who you say it with. But so the culture too likes to be the way it wants to be. There's like a lot of the upper seats and the cheap crowd seats that definitely set the tone in the country, even though the DF or Central Mexico has always been the power, the central power. I kind of tend to kind of be more on the side of the northern Mexico or Norte, because to me, El Norte kind of represents closer to my, obviously because it's closer to Texas, but also in my podcast, I like to also talk about how it's the Mexican vote is up for grabs, especially for libertarians or liberty or whoever's more right wing or thinks like that, or for anybody really that is anti-state. Because man, if you listen to all these narco corridos or norteño corridos and all that, man, they're all basically saying that they're like running drugs, killing cops, killing federales. And I'm like, I always think like that right there is like the outlaw culture, but that's more northern Mexico. So, and then as far as like American Mexican, that's just kind of what I grew up with. My wife doesn't speak good Spanish the way, and I actually don't speak perfect Spanish. I kind of speak it todo mocho. My sister speaks it better than I do. So then I would have talked to my sister. So in Spanish, and so I would have lost it some. And for sure, people that are here lose it. If my kids, I try to talk a little bit, but I know that I don't do enough to keep it alive. So I think it's just generational. So here, I could just see the generations of the past and the future where they're not as attached to that, other than probably through parties and music and food.
Yeah, and something you mentioned earlier about your parents rooting for America versus Mexico, that made me think about my immigrant parents who came from Yugoslavia, Croatia, and they feel the same way, I would say, as yours regarding the U.S. And in some ways, I feel them now more Americanized. I feel like they feel they're more American than they are the country that they came from. Like Croatia, and because we're living in this time of the poo-pooing of America. You see so many Americans, especially this radical left wing, that saying America sucks, America's horrible. But you've got this working class from former communist countries, like in my case, Yugoslavia, but that adore and love America because, as you said, the opportunities that it gave them to live an amazing and good life. And I think that's just something fascinating and something for us to think about as well, how this working class from all over the world still floods to the United States and gets this great opportunity, and they're allowed to live a good life. And it's anyone from any background generally. And I became a fan recently of Mayra Flores of Texas, where you are, who just won. And there's a lot of talk now of the Latinos in America in piñata terms, as I'll put it, where the political parties are trying to win as many Hispanics as possible. But I think more Latinos are moving away from the Democratic Party and toward either the Republicans or other parties. How do you sort of see that? What's going on?
Yeah, so the way that I see that landscape is it's from the point of view of an entrepreneur. I grew up as a Democrat, basically as simple as put in novela terms. Basically Democrats are for the poor, Republicans are for the rich. But growing up, we were poor. But as I got older and I started kind of getting into some of my political ideas and also starting to make some money, you start kind of saying like, well, there's also one party that kind of wants you to keep a little bit more of your money than the other. And you know what? I need my money, right? Because I need to buy some tickets to try to go to this World Cup tournament, right? So I just think that the generations are shifting towards they're going to have more income that they want to protect for the next generations that are coming. I intend for my kids to have a different opportunity baseline than I did, still teaching them the same values that I was taught, because I think overall I'm okay vato. But I would tell them and show them that there might be one political spectrum that kind of keeps you closer more to family and or promotes more family and your finances towards staying within the realm of your home, you know. So I just think there's more of that going on, and for it to happen at the Rio Grande Valley, that has to be a little bit a different angle, and I would think that has to do a little bit with the border issue. And I don't know if she's going to win the re-election again. Sometimes these things are like they go back and forth. But for her to win the way she did and to be speaking out like she does, you know, I think it's great just to punch again, like I said, punch up at the system, because to see a Mexican-born congressperson for the first time and being a Latina and from Texas, I think that's great. I think that that really shows anybody that you know, again, it goes back to the blending of these cultures that someone like her can become a congressperson. So I just think that it's that, and then on the immigration side, I just think that right now it's still used by the Republicans to really just galvanize their base to get excited about scaring them about the others. So once that switches, where maybe somebody convinces them like, hey, there's people out there that also want lower taxes and just want to have they're more family, they're more Christian or Catholic culture. You might want to try to get their votes and check some of what their ideas are about. But until then, it's going to probably be somewhat of the same, where it won't be too much of a difference. Just it might just depend on a specific candidate that might get some people excited. If not, then it'll just be the same rhetoric until there's more minority Latinos that actually vote in bulk and actually do that. But I think right now we kind of live in the shadows a little bit. But you know, maybe someone like her will get some people excited enough to get involved politically, whether you're left or right.
Yeah, one of the comments you made, I mean, this is just totally anecdotal and just I had like 10 seconds to think about it. But I think when I was growing up in the States, I felt that the working class around me or that I knew, which would be mostly, you know, Croatian American or maybe Mexican, and I also grew up in a strong Jewish community, that they were largely Republican, and I felt like the rich were the Democrats or the progressive liberals. But again, that was 20, 30 some whatever years ago. But anyway, speaking of finances and money, what are your thoughts on how the economy is going, the inflation, the gas prices, the supply chains, the shortages, the increased taxes, carbon taxes? I think around the world we're starting to see this beginning to hurt everyone's wallet. What's it like in the U.S. and how bad do you think it might get?
Well, on my front, I've always so when I said I didn't read any books, that wasn't 100% true. The one book that I did, I read two books in my life, Ron Paul and the Fed, and then the first one that I read that after I read it, I dropped out of college immediately, was Rich Dad Poor Dad. So Robert Kiyosaki's book, and after that one, I got into real estate. So I've always had real estate holdings, and those have always been something that I'm more in tune with. So I don't get too much into the finances of like the stock market and different things like that. I mean, I know what's going on, but to me, I've always liked the idea of being as close as you can to the streets, and what else can you really do to get that close other than holding real estate, you know? So to me here, rent is going up. A lot of things are going up. It's unfortunate for some people that can't raise their incomes fast enough to keep up. Sometimes I feel that I know that people adjust, they'll group up together, they'll do different things. I mean, everybody tries to survive the best way that they can. And yeah, you know, I do think that it's going to get worse for some people. For some others, if they position themselves right, and this again goes back to culturally getting into different aspects of finances as far as like real estate. You know, I am It might come off as bad, but I'm slowly waiting, patiently waiting for the next time for there to be a drop, so I can try to catch some foreclosure properties like I did in '09 and '10, because that was the difference maker in my life for me and my wife to be where we're at right now. So everybody plays the game as best as they can. In my podcast, I will talk about real estate and investing as much as I can. Hopefully one day I'll actually have Robert Kiyosaki on there on the show. That would be amazing. And so that's kind of my take on it, is that I've never been a Bitcoin person. I've never kind of been put my money in the stock market. I just don't like the idea of sending my money up to New York. It seems like a far away country, planet to be sending my money up to over there. So I just never liked that idea. I just like to I like to be able to drive and see the wealth that I have in real estate.
Yeah, I'm also never been a stock guy, and again, a lot of pretty much every single Croatian American immigrant that I know back in Illinois, they're all into real estate. They've all done well just purchasing real estate. It's incredible. Do you have any thoughts on, one of the things I freak out about most is the COVID 1984, as I call it, biosecurity state, this technocracy, and I don't know how much you've looked into it, the Great Reset agenda, and it seems like they want to take away our cars and force us to eat cockroaches, but and inject us without end, and these crazy vaccine passports that prohibit you from working and traveling. But referring back to what you were saying about books, it's like I also find very valuable and relevant, like life experience, your work experience, and you talk to a lot of people as well, and so you gain insights. Reading a book is not the only way to gain an insight, but have you covered or thought about this, what's been going on with the lockdowns and Great Reset and this sort of stuff?
Yeah, so on the podcast, what I've said is that once after the 2 weeks happened, I kind of really fast started getting the feeling that it was a kind of a 9/11 style reset. Back when 9/11 happened, I would have fell into the propaganda. I would have been 2001, I don't know, like 19 or 20 years old. And so I fell for all of that. And at the time, I believed that our government was trying to do the best that it could, but without knowing that there are hidden agendas and special interests behind it. So therefore, in hindsight, now I know that wasn't the case. So that's the way it kind of felt to me after the 2-week lockdown. Because the first 2 weeks, everybody kind of likes a little 2-week vacation if you could take it, if it was forced a little bit. But after that, that's kind of the way I took it. And yeah, I started kind of saying, all these variants kind of sound like the different variants of terrorist groups. And to me, it just kind of feels like a replay, other than this time it did affect us here on the homeland. So that's probably why there is more of a pushback from a different variety of people. I know now it's a little bit more clear politically wise, but not really. There's lefties and righties that have different opinions on this, and you can kind of get a feel that I always kind of thought it was funny that a lot of people that were anti-Middle East, anti Islam, kind of terrorist Islam, that when they had their face mask on, they looked like they were like the oppressed people, with female, like they would say, they're oppressed because they have to wear these face coverings, but they had their face coverings, and so I just kind of take it that as long as, man, it sucks, man. Like, I wish it wasn't the way it is, but all I can do is try to just protect my family and live life the best I can to make sure my kids grow up without thinking that it's normal to wear a face mask. We as soon as COVID started and the restaurants were open, I would go out to restaurants with my kids, family, everybody. I would post pictures. not to kind of be like, oh, look at me doing it. It was like just trying to kind of be like, hey, it's okay out here, but also I'm also aware that a lot of people passed away. We had some close people pass away from it, and so it sucks. It was probably something leaked out of China, probably it was probably some funding from the U.S. And it sucks, and that's what happened. For good reasons, we're blessed to that it wasn't a killer for like little kids as much as the next one could be, which is horrible. It sounds horrible, and I hope it's not. But that's kind of my take, is that I kind of play it round by round, just like the way I see my boxing.
I've always thought that if I ever returned to the U.S., the only places I would go would be either Florida or Texas, or maybe a state in what's known as the American Redoubt, like the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming, and that sort of place. Do you think they'll try to bring back mandates and lockdowns and vaccine certificates? And if they do you think Texas is a safe place to be, that there's enough of political will to sort of fight that stuff off?
I think there is now, just the same way that it cannot be as easy to start a war in the Middle East. That whole brain mindset took 20 years basically to snap out of. And if they wanted to go back to the Middle East, it's going to be questioned a lot harder, different angles, because we just went through it. So I do think that it would be a lot harder for that to happen here in Texas, but it doesn't mean that it won't. Probably would happen more in the bigger cities. They would probably push for that more. But you know what? I also kind of, again, giving the benefit of the doubt, I can see why big cities would be a little bit more aggressive, because people are a little bit closer to each other and interact a little bit more than rural. I mean, I'm not saying that is why they would be, but I can understand it. But but yeah, Texas definitely would be a lot more free than, let's say, California or New York, for sure. That's for sure.
Before I run out of time, we just got like a few minutes left. What are the best places to find you online, your podcast, and any other projects you'd like us to know about?
So you could find me on YouTube or any podcast. Basically, look up Los Libertinos. I'm on Twitter, Libertinos, and then really kind of look out for some projects that I got cooking. When I moved into the house that we live in now, which was kind of our dream home, I got inspired and I wrote a story, an immigration story. So right now, we're barely getting into the level of maybe trying to get that into a script and maybe do a short video clip about it. And then I also kind of got this agenda of Texas secession for World Cup victory. I built I know it sounds kind of funny. I built a little stadium in my backyard, and it's basically going to be used to have fun, play football with friends and family, but it's also going to be to promote a World Cup Texas victory. And if Texas ever wins a World Cup, we have to party together, man. It'll be a great game, especially if it's against Croatia, right?
Yeah, that brings back memories. It was in 2014 when Croatia played Mexico, and I went to work at my workplace in Guadalajara at the Tec de Monterrey, the top institution of education. And I was wearing my Croatian jersey, and everyone was looking at me like crazy. It was like June 2014, and we ended up losing 3-1. And my Mexican friends are like, "You should change your shirt." Anyways, it's been. I wish you a great success on your stadium. Actually, I saw a photo of you. You were cutting the grass on that field. Anyways, Carlos, great chatting with you.